What if the moment that rewired your entire life happened under fluorescent lights, between aisle 4 and a cereal shelf? What if the person who made a billionaire question everything he had ever believed about love, standards, and what truly matters, was a cashier who did not even know his name? Stay with me. Because this story is not about wealth meeting poverty. It is not a fairy tale. It is something far more dangerous than that. It is the story of a man who built an empire and forgot how to be a human being, until one ordinary woman, on one ordinary evening, reminded him. His name is Marcus. And before tonight, no one had ever spoken to Marcus like he was just a man. He is 41 years old, sits at the head of a company valued at over $3 billion, and has never once had to ask which aisle the milk is in. He has people for that. He has people for everything. His apartment is 50 floors above the city, all glass and cold marble and silence. His wardrobe is tailored. His schedule is optimized. His world is curated down to the last detail, except tonight, one detail has gone wrong. His housekeeper is sick. His assistant forgot to order the groceries. And Marcus, for the first time in 4 years, finds himself inside a grocery store just past 9 in the evening, dressed in faded jeans and a plain gray hoodie, staring at a wall of cereal boxes like they are written in a language he never learned. He picks one up. Puts it back. Picks another. Frowns. He is completely, utterly, lost. And at the end of aisle 5, leaning on her checkout counter with tired feet and a very awake sense of humor, a young woman named Emily is watching him. The automatic doors had exhaled a soft mechanical sigh as he stepped inside. The fluorescent light hit him like a cold truth, bright, unforgiving, revealing. This was not his world. Not even close. He was used to lobbies where the light was warm and intentional. He was used to floors that gleamed like they had been polished just for him, because often, they had been. He was used to people who recognized him before he opened his mouth and adjusted their entire posture accordingly. Here, no one adjusted for him. A mother pushed a cart past him without looking up. A teenage boy in a store apron restocked chips while listening to something through one earbud. An elderly man debated over 2 different brands of soup as if the fate of the universe depended on his decision. Marcus moved through the aisles slowly, the basket dangling from his hand almost comically empty. He checked the overhead signs. He circled back. He checked them again. At the end of aisle 5, Emily had watched this quiet performance unfold for several minutes. She had seen all types on the late shift, the harried, the distracted, the rude, the sweet, the broken. But this man was something new. He was lost in a way that had nothing to do with geography. When he finally appeared at her register, basket holding exactly 2 items, a box of granola and a single lemon, she could not help herself. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying the particular music of someone who finds life genuinely amusing. "Are you lost? Or are you just exploring for fun?" He froze. It was half a second. Maybe less. But she caught it, the tiny pause of a man who had not been spoken to without agenda in a very long time. He cleared his throat. "Is it that obvious?" She laughed. Not the cautious, customer service laugh that said I am being polite. A real laugh. Short and warm and completely unperformed. "A little," she said. "You walked past the same aisle 3 times. He glanced back, as if checking her claim. Then he shrugged, something shifting in the rigid set of his shoulders. "I do not usually shop for myself." "That," she said, scanning his items with practiced efficiency, "explains absolutely everything. You look like someone who is used to other people doing things for him." He raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment or an insult? She considered it with the gravity of a philosopher. "I have not decided yet." Marcus stood very still. He was a man who ran rooms. Who commanded attention the moment he entered a space. who had sat across from world leaders and not felt even a flicker of intimidation. But standing here, in this ordinary light, being teased by a woman who had absolutely no idea who he was, he felt something he had not felt in years. Relief. Pure, inexplicable, bone-deep relief. She did not know his name. She did not know his net worth. She was not calculating what he could offer her. She was not performing warmth in hopes of receiving something in return. She was simply, effortlessly, herself. She handed him his receipt. Next time, if you need help, just ask. Grocery stores can be overwhelming for beginners. He nodded, his mouth curving into a smile before he could stop it. I will keep that in mind. He walked out into the cool night air, receipt crumpled in his hand. The city stretched before him, glittering and enormous and strangely unimpressive. He sat in his car for a long time, the plastic bag untouched on the passenger seat. The store lights reflected softly on the windshield. One thought settled in his chest, quiet and undeniable. For the first time in years, someone had seen him, not his title, not his wealth, not his reputation, just a confused man who did not know where the cereal was. And he could not stop thinking about it. He told himself it was nothing. Just an interesting moment. Just a quirk of an ordinary evening. He told himself a lot of things that night. None of them were true. If you felt something just now, a small warmth in your chest, a quiet recognition of something true, then you already understand why this story matters. Part 2 is where everything deepens. Where walls begin to crack. Where a man who believes he controls everything begins to understand that the most important things in life cannot be managed, scheduled, or curated. Subscribe if you have not yet. Turn on the notification bell. And drop your city in the comments. We want to know where in the world you are watching from tonight. We will be here. And so will Emily. He told himself it was curiosity. An experiment. A quiet test of whether authentic human connection still existed when money and power were stripped away. He was lying to himself. Because you do not cancel a charity gala, clear your entire evening calendar, and drive 40 minutes out of your way for an experiment. You do it because something in you is starving, and you have finally found something that feels like food. The morning after that first visit, Marcus woke before dawn. He stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows with a cup of coffee, watching the city breathe below him. A view that had cost him $8 million. A view he normally found beautiful. This morning, his mind was somewhere else entirely. Under fluorescent lights, beside a cereal shelf, listening to a woman laugh a real laugh. He shook his head. Almost annoyed with himself. By 9, he was at the head of his conference table, and decisions were being made that would affect thousands of people and hundreds of millions of dollars. He nodded at the right moments. He spoke with precision. He was, by every external measure, completely present. But a small, quiet part of him was counting down. That evening, he told his assistant to clear everything. He drove back to the grocery store. Parked farther away this time, as if distance might preserve the anonymity. He was being ridiculous and he knew it. She was there. Same register. Same tired but alive posture. When she looked up and saw him, she smiled, not with surprise, but with the casual warmth of someone who finds a familiar face genuinely pleasant. Look who survived his first shopping trip, she said. Did you manage breakfast? Barely, he admitted. You did better this time, she said, glancing at his basket. Fewer questionable choices. I had guidance, he said. From a professional. She raised an eyebrow. That will be $5 for consulting. That feels overpriced. Welcome to inflation. He laughed. It was the second time in his adult life that someone had made him laugh without trying. The first had also been her. The visits became a pattern. Not loud or dramatic, quiet, like most meaningful things. He came back the next evening, and the evening after that. Sometimes with a full basket. Sometimes with almost nothing. Emily never questioned it. In her world, regulars were simply people who chose your aisle, and that was enough reason to be kind. Her name tag said Emily. He noticed it on the third visit. There was a small crack in the plastic, repaired carefully with tape. It caught the light when she moved. He noticed everything. The way she thanked even the rude customers, her voice staying steady like a warm hand on a shaking table. The way she straightened a crooked display between transactions when no one was watching. The way she laughed at her own stories before she reached the punchline, as if the joy was too big to wait. She talked about her life the way some people talk about weather, casually, without drama, as if it were simply the sky above her and not the weight on her shoulders. Her rent had gone up again. Her sister lived 2 states away. She had a plan to save enough money to take a class next year, though she had not yet decided what kind. You could take almost anything, he nearly said once. He stopped himself. Because if he said that, she would ask how he knew. And if she asked how he knew, he would have to answer. And he was not ready for that conversation yet. One evening, a man in a suit snapped at her. Tapped his watch. Muttered something that made her jaw tighten for exactly half a second before she smoothed it away and apologized, calmly, professionally, and finished the transaction without a single crack in her composure. When the man left, Marcus watched her exhale. Just once. Quietly. "Does it not bother you?" he asked. She considered the question seriously, the way she considered everything. "Sometimes," she said. "But it is not really about me, is it? He is carrying something. He just aimed it in the wrong direction." Marcus drove home that night and sat in his car for 20 minutes, hands flat on his thighs, not moving. He had spent his entire adult life surrounded by people who performed emotions. Who wore their feelings like jewelry, carefully chosen to impress. Emily simply felt things and then moved through them with a quiet, unassuming grace that made everything he had ever admired in a person feel shallow by comparison. He told himself he could stop any time. He told himself this was still a controlled experiment. He told himself a great many things in those dark, quiet minutes in the car. The night she told him her hours had been cut, she did not look for sympathy. Her voice was even. Her hands kept moving, scanning his items with the same practiced rhythm. But her eyes were a shade quieter than usual. "My manager cut my hours next week," she said. "Business is unpredictable, apparently." "I am sorry," he said. And he meant it, not as a courtesy, not as a social reflex, but with a weight that pressed down from somewhere deep and unfamiliar. She shrugged. "It happens. I will figure it out." She talked about stretching a grocery budget. About choosing between what you want and what you need. About learning to make the same 3 meals feel different so you do not lose your mind or your dignity. She spoke without self-pity, without performance, without any of the careful crafting that people in his world used when discussing vulnerability. She was simply honest. And her honesty was more devastating than any carefully constructed sentence he had ever heard in a boardroom. He wanted to help. The impulse was overwhelming, physical, the way you want to catch someone before they fall. But he did not. Because he knew that any offer from him, even a small one, would ask a question she could not yet answer. Why would you do that? Who are you, really? And he was not ready to answer that either. Instead, a few days later, he brought her a coffee. Just a cup, still warm, set quietly on the counter during her break. "I was not sure what you liked," he said. "So I guessed." She looked at it. Then at him. Her expression did something complicated, surprised, touched, a little wary of being touched. "You did not have to do that." "I know," he said. "I wanted to." She smiled, the real one, the one that reached her eyes. "Thank you." It was a small moment. smaller than any gesture he had ever made in his life. And yet it settled in his chest heavier than all of them combined. Because he had not done it to be seen. He had done it because she deserved it. Because she worked long shifts and stretched her budget and laughed at her own jokes and treated strangers with a dignity they had not always earned. Because she was, quietly and without fanfare, one of the best people he had ever met. And he was lying to her every single day. One evening she said, "I think character is revealed in how someone treats people who cannot offer them anything in return." She said it casually, between customers, the way she said most true things. She was not directing it at him. She did not know she was pulling the floor out from under him. He nodded slowly. He thought about the conference rooms. About the people who had smiled at him for years because of what he could give them, and the people he had quietly dismissed because of what they could not. He thought about the word standards, and how he had used it as a shield for so long he had mistaken the shield for a value. He thought about Emily. And he realized, with an acute and uncomfortable clarity, that this woman, this tired, warm, quietly extraordinary woman, had better character in her cracked name tag than he had accumulated in 41 years of carefully curated success. He began to look forward to the end of each day in a way that had nothing to do with control or achievement. He counted down to the store without admitting it to himself. He noticed that he smiled more. His assistant noticed it too, though she said nothing. The longer it continued, the more impossible the truth became. Not because the truth was terrible. But because the truth would ask her to reimagine everything, every conversation, every joke, every moment of easy ordinary connection, and wonder, was any of it real? He knew the answer. It was the most real thing in his life. But she did not know that yet. She only knew a man named Marcus who could not find the cereal aisle and brought her coffee and listened like someone who genuinely wanted to hear. She did not know the rest. Not yet. Stay with us. Because what happens next, the revelation, the confrontation, the truth that cannot be unsaid, is the part that will change how you think about connection, authenticity, and love. Part 3 is where it all breaks open. And where something new, something truer, has the chance to grow. If this story is moving you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell us, what do you think Emily will do when she finds out the truth? We are reading every single one. There is a moment in every honest love story where the pretending has to stop. Not because the lie was malicious. Sometimes the most dangerous deceptions are the ones that begin simply, quietly, almost accidentally, the ones we keep not to harm someone, but because we are terrified of losing something that has become more precious than anything we have ever built. This is that moment. It was a Thursday. The night of the charity gala, a glittering event full of names that appeared in newspapers and people who had never once stood in a checkout line wondering how to stretch a grocery budget. His assistant had reminded him 4 times. His tuxedo was pressed and hanging on the back of his bedroom door. His driver was waiting. He told himself he would stop by the store first. Just for a moment. Just to see her. This was, of course, a lie he told himself to avoid examining the truth. Emily was finishing a rush when he arrived. Hair slightly messier than usual, smile slightly more tired. When she saw him, it appeared anyway, instinctive, warm, genuine. "You are early tonight," she said. They talked. Light and easy, the way they always did. The conversation moved around small things, the weather, a difficult customer, the sandwich she had eaten for the 3rd day in a row because the bread needed using up. He listened. He laughed. He was, in those minutes, more himself than at any point in the 41 years that preceded them. Then his phone vibrated. Not a text, a call. His assistant. He silenced it. But Emily noticed. "Important?" she asked. "Yes," he admitted. "I have somewhere to be." She nodded. "Well. Good luck, wherever it is." He hesitated. Maybe I will see you later? She smiled. I am here until closing. He walked to his car. Called his driver. Put on the tuxedo. Went to the gala. He shook hands and made speeches and answered questions with the smooth, practiced ease of a man who had done all of this 100 times. He smiled for photographs. He nodded at the right moments. He was, to everyone in that room, exactly what they expected him to be. And he could not stop thinking about a woman on a closing shift who ate the same sandwich 3 days in a row so the bread would not go to waste. Emily stepped off her shift early that night. Her manager had waved her out, told her to enjoy the rare free evening. She had smiled, said thank you, and walked out into the cool air still in her uniform jacket, too tired to change but too relieved to care. She had no particular destination. Just the small pleasure of an unplanned evening, a slow walk, maybe a cheap meal somewhere quiet. She passed a restaurant, one of those glossy, windowed places where the light inside is golden and the people inside are dressed for reasons she had never had. She paused for a moment, the way people pause outside windows they are not meant to enter, just to remember that other worlds exist. And then she saw him. Through the glass. In a tuxedo. Shaking hands with a silver-haired man. Laughing the private laugh of someone who belongs completely. She stood very still. She knew his face. She knew his voice. She knew the sound he made when something genuinely surprised him. She knew he could not find the cereal aisle and that he brought coffee when he did not have to and that he listened like listening was something he had been waiting his whole life to practice. She did not know this. She did not know the tuxedo. She did not know the handshakes. She did not know whatever room this was and whatever world it represented. She watched for a moment longer than she should have. Then she walked away. He arrived at the store the next evening at his usual time. Emily was there. Same register. But the warmth in her posture was different. Not absent, she was too fundamentally kind for it to disappear entirely, but adjusted. Careful. Like a hand that has learned to hold something without gripping. He placed his basket on the counter. She scanned the items without looking up. After a moment, she said quietly, I saw you last night. Through a window. She paused. You were in a tuxedo. Silence. A charity gala, he said. There was nothing else to say, and he knew it. She looked up then. Her eyes were steady and searching, the way they always were when she was deciding how much something mattered. Who are you? She asked. Not with anger. Not with betrayal. With something more complicated, the quiet devastation of a person who had been real with someone, and is now wondering if that realness was received by the right person. He told her. Not everything at once. But enough. His name. His company. The reason he had walked into that store the first night. The reason he had come back. She listened the way she always listened, completely, without interruption, without performing her reaction. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Were you testing me? At first, he said. And then I stopped. And then I could not tell you the truth because I was afraid of losing the first honest thing I had experienced in years. Another silence. Longer. That is not fair, she said finally. I was real with you. Every word. Every small thing. I did not have a version of myself I was hiding. I know, he said. That is exactly why I stayed. She looked at him for a long time. He did not try to fill the silence. For once in his life, he simply sat inside the discomfort and let her have it. I need to think, she said at last. I need time to think. He nodded. I will give you whatever you need. He left without buying anything. 3 days passed. He did not go to the store. He honored the space he had promised. He went to work, made his decisions, ran his meetings, and felt, for the first time in decades, genuinely uncertain about something that mattered. On the fourth day, a message came. Simple, short, written in the direct and unpretentious way she did everything. It said, "I am not angry that you have money. I am angry that you waited so long to trust me with the truth. But I also know you were scared. And I understand scared. Coffee? Somewhere quiet?" He read it 4 times. Then he wrote back, "Yes. You choose the place." She chose a small diner 2 blocks from the store. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and good pie and light that was warm because it was old and not because someone had designed it that way. She was already there when he arrived, in regular clothes, hair down, no name tag. And somehow, without the uniform, without the context of the checkout counter, she was even more herself. Unhurried. Clear-eyed. Present. They talked for 3 hours. About everything. About who he was and who he had been hiding from. About her life and her plans and the class she was finally going to take because she had decided it would be in business, small business, local, something that helped people like her keep the thing they had built. About what trust means when it has been broken by good intentions. About what it takes to rebuild it. He did not offer her money. He did not offer to fix things. He offered, for the first time in his life without calculation, simply himself, uncertain, imperfect, and for once not pretending to be otherwise. And she, being who she was, received that with the same quiet grace she brought to everything. There is a version of this story where it ends at the gala window. Where the gap was too wide, the deception too long, the distance between their worlds too great. But this is not that story. This is the story of what happens when a man who has been performing excellence for so long he has forgotten what it feels like to simply be good, meets a woman who has always known the difference. Marcus did not transform overnight. Growth is rarely dramatic. But he began to see things differently. He began to notice the people who ran his building, their names, their struggles, the particular weariness of someone who gives good service to people who do not always return it. He began to ask questions in rooms where asking felt like weakness. He began to let himself be seen. Emily took her class. Then another. She kept her evening shifts for a while, not because she had to, but because she liked the quiet honesty of late-night transactions, and the people who moved through them with their guards down. What grew between them grew slowly. And it was better for the slowness. Because the best things always are. If you are still here, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. We tell stories because we believe the world goes better with more honesty in it. More willingness to be seen as we actually are, and not as we wish to appear. More patience with people who are still figuring out how to drop the mask. This story was about a billionaire. But it was also about you. About all of us. Because how many of us have built armor so carefully over the years, the "I am fine," the perfectly curated version, the distance we call standards, that we have forgotten what it feels like to just be a person standing in bad lighting, a little lost, in need of someone who will smile at us like we are enough? The life lesson. Status impresses. Authenticity connects. And at the end of your life, it is the connections that will have mattered. The right person will not love you because of your resume. They will love you because of what you do when you think no one important is watching, how you treat the cashier, the cleaner, the stranger who is struggling quietly. Be that person in those moments. And if you are lucky, if you are very, very lucky, you might find someone who sees you doing it. And loves you for it. Pushpin if this story touched you. White heavy checkmark. Subscribe to our channel, new stories every week, just like this one. Bell turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might change your day. Speech balloon. Leave a comment below, tell us, what part of this story hit closest to home for you? We read every single message. Outbox Stray. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Because the best stories are the ones that don't stay with just one person. Thank you for being here. We will see you in the next story.